All right, everybody, we're off and running. Dale Romans, Jason Blewitt joining all of you on this this initial West Point Thoroughbreds podcast. Dale, you and I have been talking about starting a podcast like this for a while now, and it's good we're getting this thing out of the starting gate. Welcome. It's always good seeing you. And you know, how was Derby week for you last week at Churchill?
Oh, Derby week was fun. We had a good time, and it was great weather. But we're off to the races here with the first. This is history in the making, the very first West Point podcast. And, you know, West Point's always on the cutting edge of everything. Hopefully people will enjoy these.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to me, you're just like an untapped resource in this department. Stories literally for days. You and I had dinner with my wife, Terry Finley, and a newish West Point partner named Mark Pine about a week ago in Louisville. And dude, I mean, you were at center stage, and just some great stories, man, from your life at the races. You know, wrapping up basically Derby week, and, you know, Baffert and Medina Spirit, Bob Baffert and Medina Spirit with Johnny V getting the upset win in the Kentucky Derby. You know, what are your thoughts a few days after the race regarding Derby 147?
Well, I thought it was a pretty amazing feat. I mean, 7 Kentucky Derbies. You know, Ben Jones has always been at the top of the list. And I even considered the 6 wins as Baffert as being the record, because a lot of people don't realize Jimmy Jones, I think it was Citation, the last Derby winner they had, that Jimmy had trained him all the way up to the Derby, and they put him in the Ben's name right before the Derby. And I think it was always a sore spot for Jimmy, so he could have another, you know, one more Derby win and make it 6. And then Baffert came on and crushed that record now with 7. It's just unbelievable. But right before they went to gate, I told Jacob, I said, you know what's going to happen? It's going to go out and Baffert's going to just do it again.
Mm-hmm. Did he?
And it's amazing. They all go to the lead, just keep right on going.
They don't get tired, you know, and he was headed, you know, from his inside, from his outside. I thought Mandaloon had him. West Point's horse, Obezos, actually was kind of rallying down inside. That gave all of us a real thrill off the quarter pole, just having a chance to really be in the conversation there with Obezos. But yeah, no, Bob's horses don't seem to get all that tired. And I'll tell you, Dale, you know, 2020 hindsight, obviously, but going back and looking at Medina Spirit after the race, I mean, he, on paper, that is, hasn't run a bad race yet. I mean, he showed up every time, that colt.
He has, and I didn't realize it. I guess it's well publicized that he had a minor throat surgery in between the Santa Anita Derby and Kentucky Derby. And that surgery, if it works, can really help him a lot. And it's just, it's called a myectomy. What they do is they go in and cut the muscles on both sides of their neck. They don't miss hardly any training. You can do it right in the stall. And it releases the epiglottis to sit on top of the soft palate, and where it won't fall down and block the airway. And it was a fad. It was done on a lot of horses, maybe 5-6 years ago. Haven't heard of it done that much lately, but it sure seemed to help him. A little bit of extra air going 1.25 miles probably made a big difference.
Yeah, you got that right for sure. Can we have like a Johnny V appreciation moment on this podcast here? I just, you know, I think back, and, you know, he's on the cusp of turning 50. I mean, and there's just been no decline at all in his game. I mean, obviously he's far more selective now, just in terms of how many he's going to ride and what horses he's going to ride. But sweeping the Oaks and the Kentucky Derby on the cusp of his 50th birthday. You know, he's a guy next to Jerry Bailey, Dale, I'd probably put as my number 2, just in like the enjoyment I get watching him ride in the saddle when he's in a dogfight. He is just so strong.
Well, he's strong, but he's so tactical. I mean, he knew where he was the whole time. He put the horse right in the race. I was thinking the same thing the other day after the races, that, you know, we have conversations of the greatest of all time. And it seems to me like everybody plucked someone out that they watched as a child. I think we were looking up to him instead of eye to eye with more of a peer. But Johnny has to go into the conversations of the best of all time. I mean, 4 Kentucky Derbies, the world record number of purse money earned. It's I don't know who you put in front of him at this point. I know you say Jerry, but I honestly believe, and I'll say Pat Day, but that's when we were kids looking up at these guys. Are probably a little bit different than we do the peers today.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and I also think of Johnny, that's a good point, Dale, but, you know, his leadership both inside and outside that stable gate. I mean, he's a guy that has worked hard, I think, cultivating the younger riders. And really, I mean, it sounds a little corny and maybe a little contrived coming out of my mouth, but he really is kind of a role model. And I think, I look at the Ortiz brothers, Tyler Gaffalione, it just seems like, again, the younger riders are going to look up to a jockey like John Velasquez, but he's done a good job, I think, teaching another, well, probably multiple generations down the line of jockeys.
He has. They all look up to Johnny. And I mean, you can go through the stages. One of the great things about this game is you go through and you can talk to every generation of riders, and there's always been somebody ahead of them that's really helped them. And Angel, of course, helped Johnny a lot. When Johnny came to this country, Angel Cordero was still riding. Might not have been at the top of his game, but he was still at the top of our game. And he helped Johnny a lot. And then Johnny's doing the same thing for the Ortiz boys coming behind him. But he's also showing them how to live their life, take care of their money. He's never in trouble. He's a good family man. You never hear any dirt on Johnny Velasquez. He's just a complete professional.
Now, as we move forward, I mean, one of the things I love about the Triple Crown is it's like, Derby ends and boom, you're on to Pimlico, you're on to that second jewel. Just in general, Dale, because you've done well in the Preakness, the second leg of the Triple Crown in the past. Before we get to some Preakness stories on your end, these horses, if we get 3 or 4 maybe rematching from the Derby, what would you be looking at just as far as them bouncing out of the race on the first Saturday in May in terms of training or energy level and stuff like that?
Well, I think most of the trainers today, they're not going to take a horse that they don't think bounced out and came out of it very well. I don't know for sure, but I've heard the second, fourth, and fifth horses, well, about Obesos, aren't going to run back. And I wish they would. I mean, it has the statistics show that running back in the 2 weeks into the Preakness doesn't really hurt a horse much, that they do well in the Preakness. And I ran back in 2 weeks and with Shackelford, and we end up winning it.
Yeah, well, I was looking, Dale, the Shack Attack, this is the 10-year anniversary and of him winning and was like 12 or 13 to 1 in the Preakness and, upsetting the field and, had a pretty good rivalry during that 5 weeks with Animal Kingdom, who, of course, beat you guys narrowly in the Kentucky Derby. Take us back to a horse that big white face, heart as big as Churchill Downs. I mean, I think a lot of people just love Shackelford as a horse. Take us back to, going into the Derby and, more importantly, I guess that 2-week turnaround heading to Baltimore.
Well, if you think about Shackelford, you think he's really the first racehorse social media star. And he just took off on the internet when social media was in its infancy. And I tell everybody, he took the lead at the 8th pole, that I know what it feels like to think you're going to win the Kentucky Derby. He just could not quite get a mile and a quarter, but that was a great run, that Triple Crown. One of my favorite Derby stories was after that race. You don't realize it, but everybody's watching the Derby. There's 160,000 people there back then. And when the race is over, everybody's watching the winner come back. But the participants have to go downstairs and get with their horses. So the hall behind the steps or the behind and under the boxes is basically pretty empty. And Tammy and I walked down and had our kids. Everybody's with us afterwards, ran fourth. I thought he ran well, but really, like the Derby was jerked out for money when he took the lead at the 8th pole. But I see Graham Motion with the trainer of Animal Kingdom, and you could tell he's teary-eyed, very emotional. And, gave a little congratulations hug. We've been friends, and he was going the wrong direction. I said, Graham, you're going the wrong way. You got to go. He grabbed the back of my jacket, and by now the people are starting to fill up into the hall. He said, "This is your place. Just take me where I need to go." And he just kind of put his head down, held onto my coat, and I got him downstairs to the track. I said, "Now go get your horse." And then 2 weeks later, we ended up at Pimlico, and we turned the tables on him. And Shackelford gave me and my family one of the thrills of our lives. And Graham and I became really close friends after that. Later on that year in the Eclipse Awards, we're at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel in California, and we were both there. And of course, his horse won, I think, champion 3-year-old. And we ended up in the bar that night. We must have taken 500 pictures, everybody, 2/3 of the Triple Crown. And it was a great run, a great time.
Well, I mean, just in thinking back to Shackelford and his attributes, I mean, obviously a horse that had just a very, very high cruising speed where he could get out there and just get in that rhythm. and as far as just as far as his heart and that tenacity, where does he rank in terms of horses that you've trained throughout? I mean, geez, God only knows how long you've been training. I mean, well over a quarter century. Where does his toughness rank when you think about just the horses that have gone through your operation over the many years?
He's definitely in the top five. He's it's splitting hairs when you get up. They all had different attributes. He was tough now, and he was strong, and he was tough when he trained. He was just one of those horses that I've only had a couple that could actually get up to that high level of speed early and just stay there. Him and Roses and May are the two that come to mind as being the most like that. And I tell you a good story about Shackelford too. He was a favorite. I didn't think there was any way they could beat him in the Breeders' Cup Mile at Santa Anita. And he stumbled out of the gate, spotted him 10 lengths. That seems to happen to me out there. And he didn't get to win. It was just so discouraging. And so sitting on the bench with Jacob in the tunnel, he said, "Oh, cheer up. You got one more chance." And that was Little Mike. And I said, "Hey, it's a mile and a half. Little Mike," I said, we can't win. I was just down. And of course, Little Mike wins. And it just, the tables completely turn. It shows you how up and down this game can be. But with Shackelford, I did not want to retire him off of that kind of race. He was just too good and too popular. And I wanted to run him one more time. So let me run him over here at Churchill in the Clark. And he said, if he loses, it's really gonna hurt his stud value. I said, "Don't worry, he ain't gonna lose." And he went to the lead and he got to the half mile pole. And I very seldom listen to the announcer. I don't hear it. I guess you get tied up in the moment of the race. But for some reason, I could, as clear as bell, hear the announcer say, "Shackelford looking at the last half mile of his career." And the whole grandstand stood up and started cheering. And it sounded like, it was almost like it pumped him up. He just started drawing off. And they didn't sit down and stop cheering until he left the winner's circle. It was one of the coolest racing experiences of my life.
That's great. And obviously went out a winner. What was it like for you? I mean, as you fast forward later on in his career, and the Clark obviously run basically Thanksgiving weekend, what was it like for you to be able to close out his career at your home track? I mean, you're Mr. Louisville, Mr. Churchill Downs. Must have been amazing winning the Clark with him.
It was a huge deal. And it was night racing. It was one of the few nights that, the first times they had it run under the lights. And it just felt like there was something special going on that day. There were so many people around the barn after the race. We had to get security to come over and keep them back. And, when I didn't know anything about social media, I'll go to regress just a little bit back to the Breeders' Cup. My girl that works for me, runs the office, called me. She said, "There's some people that want to come and pet their fans that are going to be at Breeders' Cup. They just want to come and see Shackelford. Is that okay?" And I said, "Well, on Saturday, I'm going to work him. And anybody wants to come and see him can come pet him that day. And then we're going to shut him down for the rest of the week and just get ready for the race." So she, unbeknownst to me, she said, "We'll be there at 11 o'clock. There's some people going to come." She had been working with Santa Anita publicity. And this is how naive of social media I was. I had no idea that this was all going on. And all of a sudden, two trams pull around the barn and had over 100 people to come and pet Shackelford that day. Well, then I ended up pulling Little Mike and all of them out. And he was mean. He was tough to be around, but he was a ham. It's almost like he knew when a camera or a fan was around that he was the star, and he liked being the star.
And everybody got their picture with him, huh?
Everybody got their picture. Everybody got to pet him. I said, "If you get bit, you get bit. Just, be careful."
And he didn't bite anybody, I'm assuming.
He didn't bite. No, he always rose to the occasion.
Yeah, he was a real good horse. Moving forward, Dale, I mean, you are certainly not afraid to step up, take a shot, and swing for the fences. I mean, I think that Eclipse Award, what was that, 2012 when you were champion trainer?
Yeah, 2012.
And upsets throughout the year, multiple grade ones. I mean, you got anything potentially cooking on the back burner for the Preakness of the Belmont?
Well, I mean, there's a chance we could decide to run Sitting on Gold if it fell apart. He ran a much better race. We also did a small procedure on him between the Bluegrass and Derby weekend. He ran a nice race in the Pat Day Mile. There could be some consideration with him. And of course, we got the West Point filly going in the Black Eyed Susan. And so we'll be
Lady Traveler, right? That's Lady Traveler.
Yes. So we'll be represented one way or another in Pimlico. And then we got all the babies coming in. Always got the future looking for tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got West Point has just a really great partnership and relationship with the Albaugh family stable, and they've been great supporters and close friends of yours and Tammy. We've got a number of 2-year-olds that we're partners on. And, I stopped by. I could not, everybody, be at Derby Week and be at Churchill without paying respect to His Eminence, as I call Dale, and stop by the barn. First horse I want to ask you about is that big gray frosted colt named Officer Nick. Pretty poignant backstory regarding his name, and how about a little backstory on Officer Nick and what you think of that colt so far?
The horse Officer Nick's doing everything right. I think Frosted's going to be one of the good ones out there. I think he's going to have a lot of good sons. He looks beautiful on the racetracks, training super. The name comes from one of my close friends from middle school on is George Rodman, and he was a police officer here in Louisville. He's retired now, and he trained all the police officers, and his 2 sons were police officers. Well, his son Nick was going to a domestic dispute in his squad car, and he goes around the corner, and the guy they were going to get jumps in his car, takes off. They runs into Nick's car head on, and it killed him. And this whole city shut down for his funeral. I mean, it was a huge deal here in the city, as it should be. Nick was just a good kid. I remember when he was born. And I told his father when I had the right one, we were going to name one Officer Nick. And so hopefully, believe me, if we make it to the Kentucky Derby, this whole city will go crazy.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I think we could all use some unity. And, I've always found, thinking of the American Pharaohs or even a Shackelford, Cigar, a Zenyatta, Rachel Alexandra, it sounds, again, a little corny, but, when it comes down to it, these thoroughbreds have a way of just bringing us all together, different backgrounds, cultures, and a lot of diversity. And I could feel that presence just being around Officer Nick, the colt in the barn last week. So great story with him, and hope we have a real runner, and that'll be bananas in Louisville for sure. Even when he shows up first out in a maiden race, we've got Strong Light. He's a Brody's Cause. What's the deal with him, man?
Well, I'm a big fan of Brody's Cause, of course. So he was a Derby starter that we had. And he's a beautiful, great colt, gets over the ground really well. One of my favorites right now. He's got so full of positive energy and likes what he does and does it easily.
Well, even, you on more than one occasion, just as far as, and now we're seeing multiple Sons of Giants Causeway, you have been a steadfast supporter and, again, a very big proponent when he was standing at stud and a live Giants Causeway. What do you like about just his influence on, say, the male side of a thoroughbred's pedigree?
We've had a lot of success with Giants Causeway, not this time with Giants Causeway, Brody's Cause, Giants Causeway. And he just was such a rugged horse. I thought he was a throwback. His horses, you can really train on them and buckle down. And when they show they can run, they don't lie to you. They usually can. And his sons are now starting to be producers. I mean, not this time was the freshman champion sire last year. And I think that you're going to see both these horses, Brody and him. And, of course, the Derby winner's by a son of Giants Causeway.
Yeah, for sure. You got Protonico, the sire. And, let's wrap up this initial Blewitt Romans podcast. One other silver lining, and it was talked about with the Derby, was the fact that I know Baffert, Bob's got the horse and everything, a guy that just has an army of horses of a lifetime. But I do like seeing a horse with a very blue collar pedigree who, once again, would he go for a grand as a weanling or a yearling and $35K as a 2-year-old? I do like that, the quote unquote little guy, or at least a horse, can come out of nowhere and be a top racehorse and a champion.
Yes, that's what shows you what can happen in horse racing. And it's only sport or only thing in America. You can wake up broke one day and the next day wake up a millionaire. And that's not Baffert's cheapest Derby winner either. You go back to Real Quiet, wasn't a whole lot more than that. Or Real Quiet was $17,000. I think Silver Charm was somewhere in the 30s. So it's not the first time he's done it with an inexpensive horse, and it's probably his 3rd or 4th string horse, earlier in the year. But you just got to keep staying in this game and keep swinging.
Definitely. Let's wrap up also, what you mentioning Silver Charm, and I think he's still alive. I know he's at Old Friends. His name bounced just in a few conversations that I had, just happened to come up like organically last week in Louisville. I was talking at dinner one night and we were discussing the 97 3-year-old class where you had like Silver Charm, Free House, Captain Bodgett, Touch Gold. That was a good group of 3-year-olds, wasn't it?
It was a good group. And you'll see that there's some years that seem like they're a lot deeper and stronger than others. And then some seem like there's a dominance that just runs over everybody. But, you know, that's the thing about racing, the oldest sport in America. You never know what you're going to get this year or next. You just got to get up every day and go out there and start working towards the next Derby.
Well, you and I will work towards our next podcast together. I appreciate the time there, Dale. This was a lot of fun. And maybe we'll do a little, Preakness recap in a couple of weeks.
Let's do it before and after.
Good. So we'll do one next week before the Preakness and after. All right, my brother. This was great,
right,
Dale. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And appreciate everybody tuning in. Romans, Blewitt. We'll see you soon here on the West Point podcast.